G'day guys, and welcome to another Battleforge Gaming Ultimate Guide. In this episode, we are going to be painting a white scar. If you do find these tutorials helpful, please like our videos and subscribe to us. You can even leave a comment, it does help us immensely. As always, this model is going to be built in sub-assemblies with the head, body, arms and backpack all separate. First, we're going to start by priming our model with grey cere. After the model is primed, we are going to apply 2 thin coats of Ulithen Grey. For this step, I am using a small dry brush from Citadel. Your 2 layers of Ulithen Grey dry, we are now going to start picking out all the areas that we want to paint black. This will be areas such as the chainsword, the bolt pistol casing, and the softer areas of the armor. For this, we're going to apply 2 coats of Abaddon Black, and I'm using a small artificial layer brush for this step. Your black area is blocked in, we are now going to move on to the leathers. For this step, we are going to apply 2 thin coats of Dryad Bark, again using the small artificial layer brush. Before this next step, I mark out a white scar pattern on the leg with a grey lead, as it is easy to erase and paint over if you make any mistakes. After making this pattern, we are going to pick out all of the areas that we want red, and we're going to paint these by applying 2 thin coats of Mephiston Red with our small artificial layer brush. This will also include the helmet. Take your time with painting in the marking on the leg, and if you make any mistakes, you can go back with your Ulithen Grey and tidy it up. With the red areas blocked in, we are now going to paint the furs with a 1-to-1 mix of Abaddon Black and Dark Reaper. This will take 2 thin coats to cover. The next area we're going to focus on are going to be the areas that we want to be metallic silver. For this, we are going to base coat standard Mechanicus Grey, and after we varnish the model, we'll be blocking these in with some lead belcher. Similar to the metallic silver areas, anywhere we want to be gold, we are now going to base with XV88. This can be any little trinkets on the belt or markings on helmets or shoulder pads. This white scar is holding some trophy skulls, so we're going to start by basing the skulls with Ujabti bone. This will take 2 thin coats. The scalp around the skulls we are going to base with 2 thin coats of Cadian flesh tone. And to finish off the trophy skulls, we're going to paint the hair with a 1-to-1 mix of Abaddon Black and Rhinox Hide. The last area we need to base coat on this model is the white scar icon on the shoulder pad, and we're going to use 2 thin coats of Uriel yellow. This is how your model will look with all of the base coats completed. We have momentarily put him together with some blue tack so you can see what it looks like. Now moving on to the detailed work, we're going to start with the leathers and the furs, and we're going to shade both of these areas with some Nuln Oil. With your Nuln Oil dry, we're now going to apply an edge highlight of Dryad Bark, picking out the edges of the pouch and holster, as well as the raised areas. To finish off the leathers, we're going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Gorthor Brown and Carrack Stone and add a broken edge highlight. This is essentially a highlight of dots and dashes. The more random you can be, the better. Focusing on the furs now, we're going to apply a layer of Dark Reaper to the raised areas of the fur. After your Dark Reaper layer, we're now going to add a primary highlight of Thunderhawk Blue. And to finish off the furs, we're going to apply a secondary highlight of Fenrisian Grey. With the leathers and the furs complete, we're now going to focus on the under armour of the model. This is the black area. We're going to use a 3-step edge highlight process. If you don't want to do 3 steps, this first step will be the one to skip. If you do want to paint it, we are using a 1-to-1 mix of Abaddon Black and Eshin Grey to pick out the raised areas. This will also be used for the bolt gun and the chainsword. The second edge highlight we're going to use is Eshin Grey. We want to leave some of the previous edge highlight visible. This can be tough on the under armour, but it is easier to do on the chainsword and the gun casing. The third highlight we're going to use for our black areas is going to be Dawnstone. And like the previous step, we are going to layer it over the top, trying to leave some of the previous colour visible. If you make any mistakes during these highlight steps, just use your previous colour to tidy up. To finish off our black areas, we're going to add a dot highlight of Administratum Grey. On the underarmors, I like to make an imaginary line along the armour, and on the gun casings and the chainsword, you just want to pick out the edges and add a dot. Next, we are going to move on to the largest part of the model, the power armor. The first step is to apply a recess shade. For this, I'm using a mix of Administratum Grey and water, with approximately 4 parts paint to 1 part water. If you make any mistakes with this step, just use some of your Ulleton Grey to tidy up. With your recess shade dried, we are now going to add a single highlight of white scar. If you make any mistakes with this step, use your Ulleton Grey to tidy up. After we have done this step, we're going to add some battle damage. Focusing on the edges of the model and some small areas on the flats, we are going to use some Skaven Blight Dinge to add some chipping to the model. Whilst doing your chipping, leave the right pauldron damage free, as we do need to apply a transfer to that before adding the battle damage. With your chipping added to your model, we are going to go back to our highlight color of white scar and highlight all of the chips. To complete the battle damage, we are going to use some Seraphim Sepia Shade and add some streaks to the armor. You want to gradually build up these streaks instead of trying to add a super dark streak from the beginning. This is how your power armor will look with the weathering completed. Next, we are going to move on to the lenses of the helmet. First, we are going to apply 2 coats of Caliban green to the lenses. Using Warpstone Glow next, we are going to paint the inner parts of the lenses, leaving some of the Caliban green visible. Repeating a similar process, we use Moot Green on the inner parts of the lens, leaving some of the Warpstone Glow visible. Finally, on the very inner parts of the lenses, we are going to use a mixture of Moot Green and Flash Gits Yellow in a 1-to-1 mix. To finalise the lenses, we're going to add a dot of white scar to the very outer edge of the lens. With the lenses finished, we are now going to move on to the red areas of the armour. First, we're going to recess shade these with a 1-to-1 mix of Mephiston Red and Rhinox Hide. We're going to add 2 highlights to the red areas of this model, the first of which is Evil Sun's Scarlet. The second edge highlight we are going to add to the red is Wild Rider Red. If you make any mistakes with these steps, just go back to the previous colour to tidy up. To finish off our red areas, we're going to take some Fire Dragon Bright and add a dot edge highlight. With the red areas finished on the model, we are now going to focus on the trophy skulls. For this, we are going to add a mixture of Reichland Flesh Shade and Lamy Medium in a 1-to-1 mix, and we're going to apply this to the skulls and the scalp. Focusing on the scalp first, we are going to layer back up with some Cadian Flesh Tone. After you have applied your Cadian Flesh Tone, we are going to add a second layer of Kislev Flesh. You want to leave some of your Cadian Flesh Tone visible. Moving on to the skulls now, we're going to layer back up with some Ujabti bone. You want to leave some of the darker areas in the recesses. Repeating the same process, we're going to use Screaming Skull now, and you want to leave some of your previous layer showing through. Next, we are going to move on to the hair, adding a layer of Rhinox hide to the raised areas. After your Rhinox hide has dried, we will now add an edge highlight of Doombull Brown again to these raised areas. If you can, leave some of the previous colour showing through. Next, we are going to apply some transfers. This is a white scar intercessor, so I am going to apply the appropriate squad and company markings. Yours may change depending on which model you are painting. I like to apply my transfers with water only and allow them to set for a bit before applying some microsol. Applying transfers can be tricky, so just take your time in this step. With your transfers fully set with some microsol, I am now going to paint over the tactical arrow with some Mephiston red so that it matches the rest of the red on the model. I do a similar step with the white transfers, but this is just to make them look more complete. This shoulder pad is looking a little too clean compared to the rest of the model, so we are now going to add some battle damage. First by applying some Ulthen Grey to the red areas of the tactical arrow, and then by adding some Eshin Grey chipping like we did on the rest of the power armor. Although I forgot to film it, I did add a white edge highlight to each chipped area as well as some Seraphim Sepia streaks, just like we did on the power armor. With those steps complete, we are now going to varnish the model with Tamiya TS80 Flat Clear, and this is how your model will look afterwards. To finish this model off, we are going to focus on the metallic areas first, the silver metallic areas, adding a base coat of lead belcher. will then shade all of the lead belcher areas with Nuln Oil. You can be quite liberal with this, but you don't want it to pool. To complete the silver metallic areas, we are now going to apply an edge highlight of Stormhost Silver. Moving on to the gold areas now, we are going to apply a base coat of Retributor armor. This can take 2 coats to cover. To shade all of the gold areas, we are going to use some Agrax Earthshade. The Agrax Earthshade dry, we are now going to layer back up with some Retributor armor. You want to leave some of the layer underneath visible, as well as the darker areas in the recesses. Repeating the technique in the previous step, we are now going to use a mix of Stormhost Silver and Retributor armor in a 1-to-1 ratio. To finish off the gold, we are going to use some Stormhost Silver and pick out the highest points of the gold as well as the edges. After I've finished painting the model, I scrape back the contact points very carefully with an X-Acto knife or scalpel, and then assemble the model with plastic glue. Hopefully you have found this tutorial helpful. Stay tuned for our next ultimate guide, and I'll catch you later.